Hey there guys, so I think I'm coming to grips with the blocks in the East here. It's an interesting game. I wanted to talk a little bit about the mechanics of actually, having a combat and movement a little bit, and then just my general impressions after 3 or 4 combats. And I think this will be, partially interesting perhaps. First comment I want to make before starting on that is this map. To me, represents a new generation of approach to artwork, and or perhaps a new phase in the art for maps. It is, at first glance, overwhelmingly colorful and bright, and somewhat almost garish. And I mean that in that it's almost an unattractive map. You have these candy stripe railway lines and bright aqua blue rivers and all the rest of it, and then these great big plains and richly detailed trees and things, and then all these dots and colors and stuff. And it gets and here's the little extension map here. You look at that now, around Berlin and Leipzig and all that. It's pretty overwhelming. So you've got factories that are in production with a full circle around them, and those that aren't in production don't have a circle around them, and different size cities based on dots, and it's what the fuck, right? So when you stop though and read the rules, look at the beautifully illustrated rules, and understand all of this content that is being provided to you visually, somewhat probably similar to that the D-Day at Omaha game that the chap made that everyone complained about, but once they started playing they realized how rich it was, where different hexes had different capabilities based on the color dots that were in it, or different fire effects and things like that. This is kind of like that, and as you look at it and look at the setup criteria and how it's all laid out on the map and everything, it becomes visually rich, and it's actually very beautiful once you sit down and take the time to look at it. The same goes for the counters. The counters are, at first they look very functional, but then when you start looking, you go, okay, this has got a yellow dot here, and it's got a blue dot there. What does all that mean? And it's sort of setup areas. It's great. Okay, German units have setup dots at the top. Soviet units have setup dots at the bottom. Nice little touches like that. The different colored steps indicate a specific cost to rebuild that unit. Once again, that's a nice little way of doing that. And there's this concept of technology in this game too. The Russians are really starting out at tech level 1, and then Germans start out at tech level 2. And that impacts your ability to hit. So for all that you are picking up a handful of dice and rolling them to see who hits and what and how they hit, there's a reason behind it. And that makes a lot of sense to me. Now, let's have a quick look at a couple of combats. We went through the beginning of the cycle, and we did our strategic war effort. We checked supply, everything was okay. You don't provide yourself with the production in turn 1. You receive a certain amount of production based on the factories you have every turn. You don't do that in turn 1. You do your strategic rail movement. We didn't have to do any of that this turn. And then you move straight into movement. Move into movement. There you go. You pass on into movement, or whatever the case may be. Anyway, so you move into the hex to actually combat. So we were here, and we popped into here, and we attacked. And I had this guy on top of here. We're fighting some pissy little division of Soviet guys. And because that is a straight up combat, there's a 5 and a 3 and a 4 unit step unit. We just went ahead and rolled for our attacks, and we hit on the army hits on a 5 and a 6, and I think the infantry, they only hit on 6s. That's right. So that's fine. So what happens here is, because it's armor, in the special rules or the advanced rules, you have the capability to do an advanced. Use the concept of the panzer attack, which is what I'm trying to say here. And so if there's only infantry in the hex and you're attacking, then they get to roll first. So we did that. We rolled, and we missed. And then the infantry finished up for us. So Germans were nervous on their very first set of attacks. Once you finish that combat, you then have the ability as a army unit to blitz. And so we moved into this hex, and there was a unit there. And we blitz attacked that unit. You move one hex, and then you can combat. And I did the same thing here as well. So now that nicely replicates, you know, in the classical Russian campaign style, the Russian campaign style from Jedko back in the day, that sort of second impulse movement where the armor gets to do cool things. So in this case, you know, we got to do 2 little overruns here, and we wiped out 2 additional units, and away we went. This hex here, I want to talk about this one because we're doing some cool stuff here. We're using artillery, but we were also attacking across a river. And like many games, when you attack across a river, there are penalties. Artillery doesn't suffer any penalties, though. So the artillery fired first, as artillery always fires first, and they rolled basically 4 ones. It was 3 ones and a 2. So they missed. Excuse me. And so then that left it up to the 10 steps of infantry to storm across the river and kill the very brave 2 armored units, an armored unit and an infantry unit there. So they wiped those guys out pretty quickly. Now, because there's no armor in that hex, we don't get to carry on with doing any further combat this turn. But we do get to advance into the hex. Let's see. Now, this was an interesting... Where did it go? We put them back to base. There was another combat. I think it might have been here. And there we had... oh, no, that's right. It was here. So what happened when I went and did this advance, I actually had air units on top of the whatever was here. I forget what was here now. I've got it written down, but if I keep looking up and down on my piece of paper, I will shake the camera around too much. So recalling from memory, I brought in a bomber with 5 steps and a fighter unit with 5 steps. And there was also a unit in there, a Soviet Air Force unit, and it obviously flew to intercept. They both conducted their combat, and the German aircraft unit took a step loss. Okay, that's great. Well, that's basically no effect because it had 5 steps, and the next rotation down is 3 steps. So, for instance, here's the unit here. He took 5. Has 5 steps. He took 1 step loss. Well, he needs to take 2 steps in order for him to actually lose a step and rotate to here. So that was beneficial. We then, of course, rolled with our 5 dice, hitting our 5 and 6, and we snookered that dude and put 2 steps of hurt on the unit that was here, I believe, and he was out of the game. So nice little combats there. All right, so that's the combat mechanic, basically. There are a set of DRMs that provide you with either extra dice or less dice, and that really sums up the combat. Now, the way that they're summed up, the way they're applied, is based on the what's the way to put it? It's based on the periodicity that we're looking at. We're in 1941. We're in June, and there are certain things that happen, and that you have modifiers that are based on the time period. If we roll forward and we go up a tech level, and as the Russians will do later on in the game, then their new tanks that come out will have a different capability. They will be able to attack and hit on 5s and 6s, and their bombers will be able to fly further and be able to hit on 4, 5, and 6, and things like that. So I really like that. It's a nice touch to the game. It gives it great theme, and that's one thing that I think a lot of block games miss these days. All right, kind of a long ramble just for a very small section of the game. Wanted to get my first initial reactions to how it all works. I don't feel like I'm throwing too many dice. I feel like I'm having to make some good decisions. I'm having to think about where I'm going to attack, how I'm going to attack. If I have an opportunity to follow on, where do I want to do that? You know, should I bring in all panzers in this attack, or should I use a combination of forces? There are some choices to be made here. It's not just pile in 10 points and roll 10 dice. One comment I do have, a query that I will post up, is there are stacking rules that say you can only have 4 units in a hex. But in the movement rules, it says when you move into a battle hex, as they call it, where combat will take place, where there are both enemy and friendly units, stacking may be ignored. I'd like to clarify that that means that stacking will be ignored, but each side must keep its own stacking under control. Or does that mean I can pile in 10 cubes or 10 blocks into one hex? I don't believe that's what it means, but we'll see. It might. We'll find out.